Adding integers with models is the way that we're going to introduce our new unit on all operations with integers. As you remember, integers are positive or negative whole numbers. They can be represented with models such as counters and number lines. And we're going to look at both of those, counters and number lines. And when we're using the counters, remember in class we've used those flat discs. The yellow side we refer to as being positive, and the red side we refer to as being a negative. And then what happens is when you have a positive and a negative together, they give us what's called a zero pair. Because you have one positive, one negative, they cancel each other out, and we end up with the number 0. It's like you owe someone $1, you pay them back their $1, you now have a zero balance. So let's look at how we can use these counters to build our numbers. This first part asks us to use 4 counters to show the number 4. Now I'm going to be using yellow and red dots to represent the counters. On your paper, you're going to draw a circle. If it's positive, you're going to put a plus sign. If it's negative, you're going to use a minus sign, unless you have red and yellow markers yourself. So to show the number 4, it's a positive number 4, which means I'm going to use yellow counters. And I need 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my 4 counters that represent the number 4. Each counter is a positive 1. Now I need to use 6 counters to represent the number 0. Well, in order to do this, I know that I'm going to have to think about those 0 pairs. I have to use 6 counters, which means since it's a pair, I'm going to need 3 of each. I'm going to need 3 positives, and I'm going to need 3 negatives. They cancel each other out, and so then we end up with a total of 0. 7 counters to show -1. Well, I know then that I'm going to have some 0 pairs again because I have to use 7 of these. So this 0 pair is 2 counters. Let me add another one. 4 counters. And another one. 6 counters. And then I need 1 extra negative to represent that I have a sum total of -1. So now here I have some examples of equations that I need to use to represent an addition problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to count up my negatives, and I'm using them first because they're to the left. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. So that means I have -4 plus 1, 2, 3, a positive 3. Well, that means that these guys here cancel each other out. These cancel each other out. These cancel each other out. So I end up with a -1. I'm going to do the same thing here with 5. I've got 1, 2 negatives. So this is a -2 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. I know these are going to cancel each other out into 0 pairs, and I end up with a 4. Pause right here and try this next one on your own. Did you get the same answer I got? You should have a positive 3. You would have had -3 plus 6, which gives us a positive 3. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build the model for 7, 8, and 9, and then figure out what my solution is. So I'm going to begin with -3. So here's my -3, and then a positive 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I have 3 0 pairs, and I'm left with 1 as my answer. So look at the next one. We're going to begin with a positive 3. Then I need a -4. And again, I have 1, 2, 3 negative pairs, but this time I have -1. On number 9, we're going to start with -3, and then we're going to add -4. Well, I have no 0 pairs here, so I'm just going to count these together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I end up with -7. So when we think about the patterns here, I want you to look at something. Do you see how in number 7 we had more positives? So our absolute value, remember that's the distance a number is from 0 on a number line. Our absolute value of 4 is greater than the absolute value of -3. And since the 4 is positive, our answer is positive. On number 8, we had 4, which has a greater absolute value than 3, is negative, and our answer is negative. So what you should have noticed is that the number with the greater absolute value, determines the sign of the answer. Okay, so the number with the greater absolute value tells us if our answer is positive or negative. So now let's think about number lines. The way things work on a number line is we always will start at the 0, and then we move to whatever that first number is. So in this case, our first number is -1. So I'm going to start at the 0, and I'm going to move from 0 to -1. Then I'm going to come up above that. And this is, we're adding 4. So when we add, we're going to move to the right. When we subtract, we're going to move to the left. So if it's a positive, we move to the right. If it's a negative, we move to the left. So now I've got to move to the right 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I end up right here at a +3. On number 11, same thing. We're going to start at 0. And then we have to move to the +1. 4 is negative, so that means I'm going to come up above here, and I'm going to move to the left because it's negative 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this time I end up at -3. For number 12, I'm going to start at the 0. I've got -1 first, so I'm going to move to the -1. I'm going to come up above it. Now I'm adding -4. So that means I have to move to the left -4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I end up here at -5. Try this next one on your own. Check your work. Does yours look like mine? Please share any additional patterns that you have found. Pause the video and write them down. All right, now it's your time to do some work. I want you to pause this video. I want you to use your models and solve these following problems. Then make sure that you write a summary of today's work. Check your work. Make sure that you have the same answers that I do. If not, fix it so that way you have good notes.